Jesus' final warning that almost everyone ignores today. That's what we're going to talk about. And I guarantee that in the next few minutes, your perspective on the last days will completely change. Watch. For you know neither the day nor the hour. Jesus repeated these words 3 times before he died. 3 times. Why exactly 3? And why was this warning at the center of everything? As you're listening, 99% of people who call themselves Christians have no idea what watching actually means today. I'm not talking about looking up at the sky. I'm talking about something that's happening right now in your life. Jesus left specific clues, a true hidden sermon about the last days, and all these signs are being fulfilled in this decade. Some perhaps in your home, at your work, in your relationships. You'll discover what Jesus said at the end that few have noticed. You'll understand why he called these mysteries and why this message is more urgent than ever. But there's something I need to tell you right now. There's a specific sign Jesus mentioned that 90% of Christians are seeing happen but aren't recognizing. And when you discover what it is, you'll understand why this might be the generation he was warning about. To grasp the depth of this warning, let's step into the scene of that pivotal night. The silence was deafening that night. Imagine the scene. Jesus knew these were his last hours on earth. His disciples were asleep, exhausted from the tension of the past few days, but he couldn't rest. In the Garden of Gethsemane, as he prayed, Jesus wasn't just preparing his heart for the cross. He was organizing the most important words ever spoken to humanity, words that would span 2,000 years and reach you today. Luke chapter 22 verse 44 states, "And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly." This intensity wasn't just about his death. It was about you. It was about me. It was about everyone who would come after. Because Jesus knew there would be a generation, perhaps ours, that would need these words more than any other, a generation that would experience the very signs he was about to reveal. And it was in this profound silence that the most important warning in human history was born. Building on this moment of intense prayer, the events that unfolded next reshaped our understanding of the future. But what happened in the next few hours changed everything. Jesus didn't just speak to his disciples. He spoke to every person born after that day. It was Thursday night when Jesus gathered the 12 together for the waqta time. The table was set. The bread was broken, the wine was poured. But what many don't realize is that between the institution of the Lord's Supper and his arrest, Jesus spoke for nearly 3 hours straight, 3 hours of teaching that John recorded in chapters 14 to 17 of his gospel. In that room, Jesus wasn't just saying goodbye, he was creating a spiritual survival manual. Word by word, verse by verse. He was building a map for navigating the most difficult times humanity would ever face. "Let not your hearts be troubled," he began. But why begin like that? Because he knew that what would come next, both that night and for centuries to come, would test every person's faith to the limit. From this intimate gathering, we see how Jesus' gaze extended far beyond the room. Jesus looked into each disciple's eyes and saw something they themselves couldn't see. He saw you. He saw your struggles, your doubts, your fears about the future, and every word that came out of his mouth that night was meant to reach you today. Christ's final warning wasn't just for those nervous men around the table. It was a coded message for the generation that would experience the final signs before his return. But what did Jesus see that night that made him speak with such urgency? This urgency stems from how precisely Jesus foreshadowed our modern world. You know what's most shocking? Jesus described our times with chilling accuracy. Let me tell you something that happened to me. I was reading Matthew chapter 24 on my phone when I received 3 notifications in a row. One about an international conflict, another about an earthquake that had happened a few hours earlier, and the third about a prophet on social media promising healing in exchange for money. I stopped and thought, Jesus was literally describing my news screen today. When the disciples asked about the signs of the last days,
Jesus didn't give vague or mystical answers. He got straight to the point. Matthew chapter 24, verse 6 mentions, "There will be wars and rumors of wars." Matthew chapter 24, verse 7 confirms earthquakes in various places. And Matthew chapter 24, verse 11 states, "False prophets will arise." But here's what startled me. Jesus didn't stop at external events. He went straight to the most important issue: what would happen to our minds? Our ability to think clearly. The deception will be so great. Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, verse 24, that if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. Jesus knew that a time would come when even people sincere in faith would struggle to discern truth from lies. And aren't we seeing that today? How many times have you been confused about who to believe, what information is true, and which spiritual leader is genuine? Jesus knew our generation would be bombarded with conflicting information. And that's why he left a specific key to navigating this chaos. Before diving deeper into that key, consider this simple way to engage with the message. Before I continue, let me ask you something quick. If you feel like this message touches your heart, please like it and subscribe to the channel. This helps me know you're connected to this revelation and motivates me to continue bringing you content like this. It's quick, but it makes all the difference. Now, turning to the heart of Jesus' guidance amid turmoil. Now, that key Jesus left, it's in Luke chapter 21, verse 28, and it will change your perspective on everything that's happening in the world today. Jesus had just described a frightening scenario. Luke chapter 21, verse 25 reveals, "There will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth, distress of nations, men's hearts failing them for fear." Have you noticed our generation's anxiety levels? The rates of depression among young people are associated with a constant feeling that something bad is about to happen. Jesus was describing exactly that. But then, and here's the key, he said something revolutionary. Luke chapter 21, verse 28 continues, "When these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near." Wait. Was Jesus saying to be cheerful when things get tough? To lift up your head? When everyone around you is despairing, yes, because he knew something that would change everything. These signs were not evidence that God had lost control. They were evidence that his plan was being perfectly fulfilled. It's like when you're on a road trip and you start recognizing the landmarks that indicate you're arriving at your destination. You don't get depressed, you get excited. Jesus was telling us, when you see these signs, don't panic, be excited. You are approaching your destination. Yet, this raises a pressing question about our response today. But why are so few Christians excited today? Why are most as anxious as the rest of the world? The answer lies in what I call Jesus' hidden sermon. These are teachings he gave, but which were hidden among other conversations, lost among parables and better-known discourses. One of the most powerful is found in John chapter 16, verse 33. Jesus had just spoken about persecution, about disciples being expelled from the synagogues, about the Holy Spirit himself being rejected by the world. The mood was heavy, depressed, and then he said something that changed everything. John chapter 16, verse 33 declares, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." I have overcome the world. Past tense. Not I will overcome or I will overcome someday. I have overcome. Jesus was speaking as one who had already seen the end of the story. This means that regardless of what's happening around you, economic crisis, family conflicts, uncertainty about the future, victory has already been won. The final outcome has already been decided. Delving further, this victory extends beyond systems to our innermost battles. But there's something deeper to this statement. When Jesus said, "I have overcome the world," he wasn't just talking about overcoming the corrupt world system. He was talking about overcoming everything the world uses to defeat us: fear, despair, loneliness, and lack of purpose. In another little discussed passage, Jesus explained how this victory works in practice. John chapter 14 verse 27 affirms, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you." The peace the world offers depends on circumstances: having enough money, stable relationships, good health, and a secure future. But the peace of Jesus is different. It exists regardless of circumstances. It's a peace that can coexist with financial problems, a peace that can coexist with complicated relationships, a peace that endures even when the future seems uncertain.
And that's the key to understanding the end times. It's not about escaping the problems, it's about having peace in the midst of them.
Accessing this peace, however, requires intentional steps in our daily lives. But how can we access this peace when everything around us seems to be falling apart? A friend of mine told me something that made me think for days. "I can't watch the news anymore. It makes me so anxious." She didn't know it, but she was living exactly what Jesus predicted would happen in the last days. And more importantly, she was missing the key Jesus left for living in peace, even in the midst of chaos. Jesus knew there would come a time when the news would be overwhelming, when worries would multiply faster than our ability to process them. And so, he was very specific about how to navigate that period. Matthew chapter 6 verse 25 confirms, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or what you will drink." What do you mean, don't worry? You might be thinking, we live in a time of inflation, unemployment, and instability. But Jesus wasn't promoting irresponsibility. He was revealing something revolutionary. When our minds are divided between trusting God and worrying about circumstances, we lose our ability to discern spiritually. And here is Jesus' most urgent warning. A person who is anxious, worried, and afraid of the future becomes an easy target for deception. Understanding this vulnerability highlights the clever tactics at play. Think about it. The false prophets Jesus said would arise in the last days are clever. They don't arrive offering obvious heresies. They arrive offering solutions to our anxieties, promises of security, and formulas for a trouble-free life. Jesus was warning us. When you are anxious about the future, you become vulnerable. But he didn't stop with the warning. He gave the solution. Matthew chapter 6 verse 33 states, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you." All these things. Jesus promised that when our focus is in the right place, God will take care of everything we need. But how do we put this into practice when the world is on fire around us? A timeless story illustrates this practical shift in focus. The answer lies in a story that changed my life and will probably change yours too. Jesus was at the home of Martha and Mary. Martha was rushing around, stressed with preparations, worried about 1,000 details. Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet, simply listening. When Martha complained that Mary wasn't helping, Jesus said something that revolutionized my understanding of priorities. Luke chapter 10 verse 41 reveals, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but only one thing is needed. Only one is needed." Imagine if Jesus said this to you today. You worry about many things: work, bills, relationships, health, the future, but only one thing is necessary. Luke chapter 10 verse 42 continues, "Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her." Here's the secret few understand. The good part wasn't a specific activity. It was an attitude prioritizing God's presence above all the demands of life. This choice isn't one time. It's a daily commitment that transforms our outlook. But there's a crucial detail. This isn't a once-in-a-lifetime choice. It's a choice we have to make every morning, especially when the pressures mount. Jesus knew that in the last days, everything would accelerate: information arriving faster, demands increasing, pressures multiplying. And in the midst of this rush, it would be easy to lose sight of the one thing necessary. Do you know what the practical result is when you develop this? You stop living in the anxiety of what if and start living in the confidence of even if. Even if the economy collapses, God is in control. Even if relationships are difficult, God has a plan. Even if the future seems uncertain, God has already seen the end of the story. And when you live like this, something supernatural happens. You become immune to the fear that is paralyzing the world around you, because fear only has power when you feel alone. But when you live in the awareness that God is with you, fear completely loses its power. Beyond personal peace, Jesus unveiled a broader revelation about these times. But there's something Jesus revealed about the last days that most people have never heard. It's hidden in a conversation he had with his disciples in Mark chapter 13. Jesus was leaving the temple when one of his disciples commented on the beauty of the buildings. Jesus responded with a shocking statement. Mark chapter 13 verse 2 declares, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." The disciples were troubled. They asked when this would happen and what the signs would be. And then Jesus gave one of the most detailed prophecies about the last days. But in the middle of this prophecy, he said something few pay attention to. Mark chapter 13 verse 10 states, "But the gospel must first be preached to all nations." First, before the end comes, the gospel will be preached to all nations. And for the first time in history, this is happening through the internet, television, missionaries, and the translation of the Bible into nearly every language in the world. The gospel is reaching the most remote places on the planet. This global reach goes beyond words to lived examples. But here's the hidden revelation. Jesus wasn't just talking about preaching in the traditional sense. He was talking about a demonstration.
The world would see not just the words of the gospel, but the power of the gospel demonstrated in the lives of ordinary people. Matthew chapter 24 verse 14 confirms, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come." The word witness here is martyrion in Greek, which means legal evidence. Jesus was saying that before the end, there would be sufficient legal evidence throughout the world that God is real and that his power still works today. And this wouldn't be through grand televised events or famous evangelistic crusades. It would be through ordinary people living extraordinary lives, demonstrating peace amid chaos, prosperity amid scarcity, joy amid sorrow. The world is watching this happen now. Amid all the crises we face, there are people who seem to live in a different dimension. People who have something that money can't buy, that circumstances can't take away. And this is one of the greatest proofs that we are living in the times Jesus was describing. Recognizing this proof calls us to personal action, but it also means something very important to you personally. If we are truly living in the times Jesus described, then each of us has a tremendous responsibility. We can no longer live as if we were merely spectators of history. We are active participants in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Jesus made this clear in Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 to 16. "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. You are the light of the world, not will be or can be." Present tense. Jesus was declaring a spiritual reality. Every person who follows him is a source of light in a world that is becoming increasingly dark. Embracing this role demands visibility in our faith. But here's the warning about the future. This light cannot remain hidden. We can no longer be secret or discreet Christians. The times demand that our faith be visible, tangible, and evident. And that doesn't mean being religious or fanatical. It means living in a way so different, so full of peace and purpose, that the people around us want to know our secret. Jesus knew there would come a time when the difference between those who follow him and the rest of the world would be more evident than ever, and that time is now.
As the world grows more anxious, we become more confident. As the world loses hope in the future, we live in anticipation of what God will do. As the world divides in conflict, we become agents of reconciliation. Yet, this distinction comes with inevitable challenges.
But Jesus also warned about the cost of this differentiation. John chapter 15 verse 18 states, "If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you." John chapter 15 verse 19 continues, "If you were of the world would love its own, but because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Living according to the principles of God's kingdom has always been countercultural. But in the last days, this difference would become more pronounced, and the world's resistance more intense. This shouldn't discourage us, it should prepare us. Jesus was warning us not to be surprised when our faith is questioned, criticized, or even persecuted, but he also gave us the key to winning this battle. At the core of that key is a promise often overlooked. And now we come to the most important point of all, what Jesus warned that many have completely forgotten.
In the last conversation Jesus had with his disciples before ascending to heaven, he said something that should be engraved on the heart of every Christian. Acts chapter 1 verse 8 declares, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." You will receive power. The Greek word here is dunamis, from which we get our word dynamite. Jesus wasn't just promising spiritual comfort or inner peace. He was promising supernatural power. But here's what many have forgotten: this power wasn't just to be used within the church. It was to be demonstrated to the ends of the earth, everywhere we set foot. This power bridges the gap between belief and everyday living. Jesus knew that in the last days, there would be a tremendous temptation to separate our spiritual life from our practical life, to be one person on Sundays and another person during the week, to pray at home but live in fear at work. And that is exactly what he warned us against. Luke chapter 12 verse 3 states, "Therefore, whatever you have said in darkness will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered in the closet will be proclaimed on the housetops." Jesus was saying that a time would come when there would be no more pretending, when our true faith or lack thereof would be evident to everyone, and that time is now. We live in an age of forced transparency, social media, security cameras everywhere, information leaks. It's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain a public image that doesn't match our private reality. Embracing authenticity unlocks true freedom. But Jesus didn't say this to scare us. He said it to free us. Because when we stop trying to maintain an image and start living our faith authentically, we discover a freedom we didn't know existed. The fear of people's judgment loses its power over us. The pressure to please everyone disappears. Anxiety about our reputation dissolves. And in its place comes something the world desperately needs to see: a person who truly trusts God, who truly lives in peace, who truly believes that everything will work out in the end. All of this leads to a transformative call to action. And this brings us to the final call. Everything Jesus said about the last days wasn't just to inform us, it was to transform us. Every prophecy, every warning, every promise he left has a practical purpose to equip us to live victoriously in a challenging time. But here's the truth that few realize: you don't have to wait until you're ready to start living this way. God's power doesn't depend on your perfection, it depends on your availability. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9 confirms, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Made perfect in weakness. This means that God is not looking for people who have everything figured out. He is looking for people who recognize their need for him.
And if you've made it this far, if you've heard this entire message about Jesus' final warning, it's no accident. God is calling you to be part of the generation that will demonstrate to the world that he is still God, not through great miracles or supernatural events, although those can happen too, but through small daily acts of faith, through peace amidst storms, through generosity in times of scarcity, through love when the world is full of hate. John chapter 14 verse 12 declares, "He who believes in me will do the works that I do also, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father." Greater works not because we are better than Jesus, but because we are more numerous. Jesus impacted one geographic region for 3 years. We can impact the entire world for decades. Imagine the impact if we heed this call fully. And maybe, just maybe, when Jesus returns, he will find a generation that has taken his final warning to heart, a generation that has not only waited for his return, but prepared for it. A generation that understood that the best way to wait for Jesus is to live like Jesus. So, what will you do with this message? How will you respond to Jesus' final warning that almost everyone ignores today? Because in the end, it doesn't matter how many prophecies are fulfilled around us if we don't allow them to transform our way of life. It doesn't matter how many signs of the times we recognize if we continue to live in fear instead of faith. Ultimately, these truths empower us for the present. Jesus didn't give us these revelations to impress us with his knowledge of the future. He gave them to equip us for the present so that we can live each day with the assurance that, no matter what happens, he has already won. If this message touched your heart, leave a comment and let me know how you intend to apply these truths to your life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Jesus' warning about the future. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more hidden revelations from the Bible that can transform your perspective on the times we live in. Because the truth is, Jesus didn't just warn about the last days, he prepared us to overcome them. And when you understand this, when you truly comprehend that the victory has already been won, everything changes. Fear gives way to confidence. Anxiety turns to anticipation. And you become exactly what the world needs to see a living demonstration that God is still in control. May God bless you on this journey of faith. And remember, Jesus' final warning is not just a prophecy about the future. It's an invitation to live extraordinary lives today.